Okay, tonight I'm going to talk about safety, and there's a good reason why. Over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been hearing all sorts of strange reports about safety failures. And safety failures, as we will find out later in the talk, has got as much to do with falling off a ladder as it does about keeping people feeling safe at work. So hopefully I will go through at least some basic safety audit, and you'll all get a copy of the slides anyway, so you may use it as you see fit. But the prime thing, and absolutely the prime thing, and I don't know how many times this was told me at BHP and other places, the most important thing you can do at work is be safe and keep everybody else safe too. And that will be the basis of what I talk about tonight. And I have some wonderful examples to share with you of perhaps not the right way to go about it. So let's make a start on it.
Hey, Peter, I'll share a little bit of a story. I was doing some work for BHP. This is shortly after the transition from BHP IT to CSC. And one of my first projects after Vic Roads was in the health, safety and environment and community area, right? You probably remember that area. And so I was doing a risk workshop, right? And so anyway, they had problems with the projector. So, you know, my BHP counterpart went and found another one and brought it in. And unfortunately, the power cord wouldn't reach. So he went and got an extension, and he had the extension on the table, and it went past the door to the meeting room because that's where the PowerPoint was. And one of the key participants was the vice president of health, who was part of the first letter of that acronym. So he walks in and almost tripped over that cable.
Oh dear. Right.
Yes.
Almost tripped over.
Yeah.
We were taught much better than that, Michael. I can tell you.
Well, I remember.
Okay.
I remember.
Hang on, let Ian recall something, Peter.
That's all right.
Go ahead, Michael.
Ian.
Remember in YL, they were the beginning of the safety things. I mean, the first week they were somebody got electrocuted in the office.
Yep.
The main admin office.
I should acknowledge Ian Searle. He and I sat the safety course at YL together, and he marked my paper and I marked his, and I just got nothing but irritated because he kept getting the answers right, and he kept marking mine with a cross. And I got very annoyed with that. But somehow I passed. I don't know whether he was nice to me in the end.
It wasn't too difficult to pass.
It wasn't that hard, was it?
No, it wasn't.
And I still know how far to weld away from a railway line.
Yeah, they did.
I have not been able to put that in place yet.
They did actually change that after a while. They sort of worked out that IT people didn't need to know that.
Clearly.
Anyway,
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
No problems. Okay. The things about a workplace is it's not just physical danger that you need to be worried about. There are all sorts of mental as well as physical, as well as even spiritual well-being that needs to be considered in terms of keeping the workplace at least healthy, as well as what we might consider to be safe. So I'll deal with some of those. And the issue BHP found out, which was really true, is that being safe actually saved you money.
Yeah.
Because of so many accidents in my early years at BHP. I forget whether we used to kill one person a month or something like that. But it was horrific.
It was in some places it was in batches.
Yeah.
Especially when the BOS blow up at Port Kembla, killed a whole lot of people at once.
And the Mara mine collapse.
Yep, mate, they go on and on. The tailings dam up at Octedi.
Yeah.
It's sort of true. I mean, we all knew mining wasn't a safe thing to do.
Funny about that.
Yeah, I mean, we'd never heard of mines collapsing or equipment causing injury. We never ever heard of that ever in the annals of human history. Of course, these things are dangerous, but there's more dangers than just that, and we'll try and deal with that. And I've always liked this as an adage. Everyone who goes to work goes home in the same or better condition. And I think if that's something we can do and aspire to, then we've done well in terms of our duties to each other. Carol, isn't that cute?
Can I just interrupt for a minute? I remember growing up, I would have been 10, 11, 12.
Yo.
My father worked as a labourer in the building industry, and when he didn't rock up at home on time, my mum said, "Oh, well, someone's dead."
Yeah.
And my older brother would say, "Let's watch TV, see who's on, see what's happened." And sure enough, his workplace was on it, and someone's gone off some scaffold. And you know, he worked for a company called EA Watts. That's the people that built the Westgate Bridge collapsed. He was on that job.
Oh wow.
Yeah, my dad was at one end of the bridge. His brother was at the other end. Another could swim, and they didn't know who was alive and who was dead. Another time, I don't know if you remember the Border Works buildings in Elizabeth Street.
Yes, I do.
Yeah,
he
was on that building, but that building was finished, I think. And the marble cladding started falling off. But he said no, it wasn't finished because he was on the job. He said no one was killed, but it did fall on a few cars and it crushed them. And my mum said, "Well, why were you hanging around?" And he said, "Oh, we had to stay there to make it safe." You know, and another one, he was on the ICI building. Listen, this building is only 14 story, and it was the tallest building in Melbourne at one stage. Connor of Nicholson and what is it? Nicholson. It's the continuation of Lonsdale Street.
Nicholson Spring.
Albert. Yeah.
It was one stage the tallest building in Melbourne, as you say. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was the first building in Melbourne to be clad in glass.
That's right.
Really?
Yeah, like we lived at BHP, you know. And I always used to think, oh, I hope these glass panels are not going to come off. But at ICI, they all came off. Well, not all, most of them kept coming off.
Yep.
Yeah. So
there you go.
The accidents are not just in mines, they're in every workplace. Not long ago in Box Hill, it was terrible. This is in they were building apartment buildings. This is less than 2 years long. I don't know what went wrong, but a guy got actually buried in concrete as they were pumping concrete in. And those dirty pigs there had the audacity to say, "Oh, because he was overweight, he couldn't save himself." I thought,
if that's should have been the job.
Something. And I'll tell you a recent experience I've had here up at my brother's place. I was shopping in Woolies, and they've got these bollards not bigger than your ankle. And what happened to me? I got caught in them and went flying and ripped my leg up. Yeah, it was terrible. But listen, and the lady there was really horrible, the manager there. And I thought, right, you bitch, I'll fix you for good and all. I called that night work cover, which you can. And you know what? Not the next day, but the day after I went there, those bollards were all removed.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yep. All right, people, on with the show.
Vita must have a few more.
Oh, yeah, mate, I do, but I'm saving it.
Does that mean Peter's presentation is now already covered?
No,
not quite, Morris.
He's stolen your thunder on all those points.
No, I was just saying,
I think it's a good question.
Yeah, but safety is not just for the mines. It's like you said, everywhere, not just at home in the shops.
Well,
Other people's
That's probably what
workplaces.
Peter's coming to.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
one of the most dangerous jobs is farming.
Actually,
Um,
actually, guys, I ran a key strategic project for WorkCover. Now, WorkCover, as you know, charge workplace premiums for every Victorian-based employer, right? Unless they come under their own scheme, like BHP, they were self-insured, and obviously there's also CompCare, which is the national program. But according to WorkCover or WorkSafe or whatever you want to call them, the safest place to be is in an accountant's office, because they charge the least amount of premium, which means if anyone gets injured, whether it's a paper cut or a ream of paper falls on their feet, they're back to work straight away. Do you know what the most dangerous job is, which attracts the highest premium for WorkCover? Do you know what that is, Peter? Or anyone
No,
else?
Farming.
Hospitality.
Ian's on the right path. Sorry, Vita, I didn't hear that.
Hospitality.
No, not really. Hospitality didn't fare too badly, but Ian's on the right path.
I would have
Meat
thought
works, meat
farming.
works,
Farming, yeah.
abattoirs.
Yeah, farming it is, but it's an element of farming. It's sheep shearing. They pay 29.4% premium for WorkCover, because the sheep shearers, they throw out their backs,
That's
they get
right.
all sorts of
They-
injuries. So there you go. There's a bit of a contrast.
All right, you guys, hold it.
But the sheep
What's that?
aren't covered by
I think you've
WorkCover,
lost it.
Mike.
Yeah, I have.
All those
Yeah,
years
you
that
have
the
lost it,
sheep get.
Peter. How about we just call it a night?
Yeah, right. Thanks for coming. All right, shut up, you
Thanks,
lot.
Peter. That was a great presentation.
Okay. The employer has absolutely one key responsibility: provide a safe work environment.
Mhm.
This comes under director's care, and it is legislated as such. And yeah, they're supposed to provide training and supervision, and actually talk to you about health and safety. So it's supposed to be an active thing that goes on. And in bigger workplaces, it's probably not true in small ones. Some of the small companies I've worked for never had any of this stuff, but a safety committee or safety represented is probably true of places like CSC and other places where we've all worked. Okay, what should you do? And really and truly, it's in 3 bits, as it says here. You need to take some responsibility for your own care and safety on a site. And that means making yourself aware of what things are. It means that you shouldn't endanger other people, but it also means that you should ask questions and follow reasonable instructions. And we'll actually deal with that a little bit tonight. Your rights. And this was in the era that I started work, this was something that seemingly wasn't followed very well. Stop or refuse unsafe work. If the boss told you to do something and you wouldn't do it, you were fired.
Yeah, I remember when I was at Arnott's while I was doing my graduate degree, and we used to have these big troves where you put the dough and everything in there, and those troves would end up in a big hot room stacked on top of each other. It was a huge room, and sometimes little tags in terms of what mix and everything would fall off. And guess who actually rode the blades of the forklift to go up and put the tags and fix all that stuff?
Right.
Was that a lunatic?
Yes, and he's right here in front of you, 35 years later to tell.
Excellent. Fine job, that. Oh dear. Okay.
Would you say, Peter, that the union movement had a role in that particular point on refusal to work if it's unsafe, and they've been quite active
I
in it?
believe it's been part of the union mandate at all times. And one of the reasons unions actually were made was to because workers were put in unsafe conditions, and because the individual worker couldn't stand up to the boss. There needed to be somebody with more oomph behind them to actually put the workers' rights in front of the employer and stand up to them. So yes, I think it is definitely a mandate of unions to do those things.
And then the opposite can happen. There's a famous case of what sent Rio down the union breaking path in the Pilbara, is that there was an accident where a supervisor, you know, they have a big red button. You know, if you've got a crusher running, there's a big red button to hit the button, and stop it. And the person who, there was an incident and a supervisor hit the button, and then the union went on strike because he wasn't a union member, and the union member can't operate the machinery.
Oh, come on.
And wouldn't come back to work until the company fired him.
Yeah, well, that's pig-headedness.
But that was classic demarcation, right?
I was.
Dispute. You know, if you weren't a member, you can't do this, and they used to protect themselves that way. But it's back to the unanticipated consequence for the union is that now wheel forward, 10 years or so, and there's no unions working in Rio Tinto mines.
Yep.
They managed to.
Exactly. You know, if they coexisted, as in management and unions, they'd both be there today. But because they got a little bit arrogant and wanted to sort of show their power off, Colin, a classic example in terms of what you mentioned there, and I've got plenty of stories from artists in terms of all the permanent staff walking out for the trivial of things and then demanding to be paid for that time off to come back to work. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was just the pendulum had swung the other way. And look what's happened now. A lot of those industries, I mean, there's still unions around, but they're not there. And it's not to say unions haven't done a good job. I mean, making workplaces safe is important. And if they weren't there, who knows what would be going on, not only in mining sites, but how about construction sites?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
And can I give you one example?
Oh, come on then.
Yeah, no,
Yes, Rita.
this is a horror story, actually. This is in the 80s, early 80s, I think it was. No, it must have been mid 80s. I was working at ICI, Imperial Chemical Company in Botany, and not far from us, there was a company called Kellogg's. They used to bake the Kellogg's cornflakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was a horrifying story. It was back then, I think it was workers' compensation. This horror boss, there was a set of twins working on site. I think they were all of 17 years old as apprentices. And this boss apparently hated them. I don't know. They could have been cheeky, but, 17-year-olds would be cheeky, wouldn't they? But it made one of the twins go into one of the furnaces where they bake our cornflakes. And he burned to death. The oven was too hot. And the kid told him, his brother was there saying it's too hot to go in. And he threatened him and the kid went in. And, after that, I never bought a packet of Kellogg's again.
Yeah.
That's a story that is a horrible story. And last night I went to an alumni night with my university and Sean Penn was there, the CEO of Telstra. And not talking about safety, but was talking about what Mike said, you've got to work together. And he's saying, organizations have to work with government together, collaborate together just to make the country secure, more from a ransomware perspective, more than anything for our safety and security.
Yep. All right. Let me move on. Okay. What my talk tonight is going to be is something that I did learn at BHP. And indeed, a lot of the work I've done on business continuity has taught me to think more deeply about this. I can't go into a building and not look around and see the things that I would expect to see. I expect to see smoke detectors. I expect to see access and egress signs. I expect to see other things, signs that would tell me where the dangers were and tell me what to do in the event of something happening. So over the years, I've sort of come to understand this, and I built a lot of the scenarios that I give to customers when I teach them business continuity. I do that based on some of the safety training that I received at BHP. And I am still amazed that so many do not understand their responsibilities. And that includes the management as well as the people there. So let's move on from that point. Okay. It's interesting to know, and I'm sorry that it's 2020 where it's talking here, but you can start to see patterns forming in terms of where fatalities occur. And it doesn't surprise many of us that vehicle collision is probably really up there. Being hit by a moving object, falls from a height, being hit by falling objects, being trapped by moving machinery, being trapped between stationary and moving objects, and other. So we know that these are common areas, but still the accidents occur, and they're not accidents, people. This I want to make quite clear. They are incidents. A lot of these things were not accidents. Everybody says, oh, it's in a car accident. I doubt that very much. Generally speaking, there is somebody that was responsible for it. And maybe they didn't mean to do it, but was it an accident? Truly, did it happen by accident? Or was it the fact that somebody took their eyes off the road, or were playing with their mobile phone, or doing whatever else, which was an unsafe thing to do? That's no accident. It really isn't.
Peter, on the one of the jobs I did for BHP around 2006, I think, so it's probably say 10 years after all those disasters in the 90s, and then BHP, you say you had a good 10 years of them really focusing on safety. But I was working on an in-vehicle management system that they were trying to implement for driver behaviour. And they were telling me at the time that motor accidents in vehicles was the biggest cause of fatalities at that time for BHP. And it was people just, driving to or from the workplace or driving between sites. And so that's what it's got down to, and that reflects that diagram, right? That would work for almost all industries. If it involves driving around, then that's probably going to be the biggest cause of fatalities.
Undoubtedly, I think. I mean, you can get things happen where you kill more, but if you keep adding them up on top of the number of occurrences, then clearly motor vehicle stuff is way up there. But if you understand, and you'd know this from your work care days, Mike, body stress injuries is really up there as probably the major thing. And that's people picking up stuff that they shouldn't, or picking it up the wrong way. It's slipping.
Sheep, shearing sheep.
Yeah, whatever it is. And the other one that's, again, no surprise, is falls, trips and slips. I was walking my dear dog down the street the other day, and he decided he'd lurch towards the gutter for some unknown reason. My dog doesn't need a reason, but I wasn't watching, and suddenly I'm sitting there rolling around on the grass going, why am I here? Now the dog came over and gave me a nice lick, but that didn't necessarily make me feel any better. So look at the one that is fourth on the list, and I'm going to try and deal with this a little bit tonight. Mental stress, right? There's a lot of these things are either swept under the carpet or not discussed, but I believe they absolutely should be. So let me move on from the statistics. You can read them later. And the question is,
Just a
if you
question,
don't
Peter,
know
I just
what's,
understand the stats. That previous diagram,
yeah, hang on.
they were serious injuries as opposed to fatalities, was it? The previous one was
Yeah.
fatalities.
The first one was
Yeah.
fatalities. This
And
is
the-
serious.
And this is then serious injuries. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. The thing is, you actually need to know what's going on in your workplace unless you actually go around and look what's going on. And for, did you ever do a safety audit, Cole?
Nope. I
Never
did.
did? Ian, you might have.
I've done them at RMIT. Yeah.
Yep. But I used to have to do them for our floor at BHP.
Yeah.
So I used to walk around with 2 or 3 others,
Yep.
and they always used to walk past my office because it was never tidy. They just considered that a disaster zone, so that was to be left alone. But that's not to say that I didn't stack paper up too high, and I had the potential to knock that over and have a fall. There was absolutely no way that that wasn't possible. So you need to know, and you need to see the signs, and you need to be able to read them and then put in place something to correct all of those things. So what we're going to see tonight is a safety audit. And yeah, there's probably more questions, and I don't intend going through in detail all of the questions, but I will pick some that I consider interesting. And if somebody else wants to talk about one they find interesting, okay, that will be fine too. So, seeing unsafe and dangerous situations and then reporting them is a way of life. You don't have to look far. I mean, that cord that you talked about being tripped over, how many times a day does that happen? And we had to tape them down on the floor at BHP.
Yep.
Or put them in conduit or something.
Yep.
Okay. The question is, if I was to come and do an audit around your house, you reckon you'd pass?
Yeah, I reckon. My house would pass, I think.
Yes. I know that you would probably be fairly onto it, but the question is, let's have a look at what the audit says, and then we'll ask you again.
Right,
Whether
you do
you'll
that.
pass. Okay.
You do that.
Okay. Now, the best way to do it is with a checklist, because it heightens in your mind what needs to be looked at. Okay. And then maybe you can answer with a confident yes, to the best of my knowledge, at this time, things are safe. Okay. And it's to help, your audit is to help others understand the risks that they may have at work. And who was, I think, talking about the trips to and from work? Was that you, Cole?
Yes.
Yeah. The same thing is true. How many times was it the M80 Ring Road today? 2 weeks ago when I thought about doing this, it was the Westgate Bridge. And you won't believe this, for the reject shop, the first training scenario that I give the people in the warehouse over at Truganina is, what do you do if the warehouse main access and ingress road, access and ingress, whichever, egress and ingress, whoever, it doesn't matter, in and out, if it's blocked, And that starts to become a business continuity issue. And do you know what it actually does?
Slows down deliveries.
Good boy. That's the major business effect.
Yeah, but hang on, does the reject shop work on the JIT method in terms of their supply chain?
Well, no.
But it
No.
doesn't have to. If you blow up,
They work on a push rather than a pull system.
Mhm.
Okay, they decide what stock goes to the stores.
Yep.
That happens in head office, right?
Yep. So what happens if a delivery is delayed by 24 hours?
Now here's where it's kind of interesting. The stock that needs to be on the shelf, well, and I'll tell it to you two ways. The first way is normal stock.
Yep.
If they sold milk and you went in there and you couldn't buy milk, what would you do?
Go somewhere else.
Right. So you lost sales. Okay. First thing. Now, the second part of it is that a lot of their stock is sales stock. Sales stock is put out with a catalogue.
Mhm.
When you put this out the catalogue, it says the stock will be in the store.
Mhm.
And what you'd end up doing if you cannot meet that is called reputational damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, hang on, that happens to Aldi all the time. You look at the special buys.
You don't have to tell me.
Hang on, you sort of go in 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning wanting to buy the thing, and it's not there, and then it rocks up about 3 or 4 weeks later.
Yep. Their system is shit.
Why give them any patronage in the first place?
Because
Right.
it becomes a sport for Aldi.
Yeah, I think it is. Okay. The first thing to look at are danger spots when entering a site. And if you worked at the steelworks in Whyalla, as Ian and I did, you wouldn't want to work in the blast furnace for quids. The rolling mill was no better. And numerous other places that seem to be really and truly perhaps not the greatest places to be on earth. I was told when I watched my first steel pour, stand in the back of the pulpit, shut up, and you may talk after the pour is finished.
Mhm.
And to me, that was really, really a pain. I mean, I had so many questions, but when they told me about the man that decided he wanted a closer view and he climbed up on the scaffolding and he bent over to look and his hat fell in. So he reached out to grab his hat.
No.
Yes, it's true. And believe me, they never found enough of him because he actually vaporized before he actually hit the steel.
Mm.
Wow.
I thought you were going to say that's what happened to the last guy that spoke too much on a tour.
It was possible. I don't think they gave tours on top of the blast furnace any longer after that.
Yeah.
Or somebody who interrupts a Peter Jeffrey presentation.
All of that is dangerous. It is truly true. Okay. Now the question is, you see something that's dangerous. How do you communicate with your employees?
Well, you could remove the danger.
Well, that would be a nice thing to do, but say you can't.
Well, then
Well, you can inform them verbally. You can use signage.
There you
There's
go.
all sorts of way. Block off the area, stop access. If it's a physical place, there's multiple ways of informing people.
Indeed. Indeed. Okay. The interesting. Hello, Andrew. Welcome.
Hello, Peter. Can you hear me?
I can
Yes,
hear you perfectly,
we all can
Andrew.
hear you.
Welcome on board.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Here's one that was a BHP thing. Are all company vehicles maintained regularly? For all of us that were lucky to have a BHP car, and Andrew, you would have had one, and
Yes.
Ian did.
Yeah, I had
Uh,
the only one. Yeah.
and I certainly did, was that they demanded that you regularly serviced it. But more than that, they demanded that you actually went through training on every time you got a new vehicle, you had to go to driver training.
It was one of the best days I ever spent, Peter. That driver training day.
Well, I'm not sure that I thought it was one of the greatest days I ever spent. I kept
learned
knocking
a
over
lot.
those damn pictures hats.
I learned a heck of a lot, Peter, and it got me out of trouble.
And you're the man who drove around in a car at Whyalla with me as passenger, and the passenger seat was not bolted down.
That was before I did the training.
Oh, good. I just wanted to mention that, Ian.
As
Okay.
my niece would say, that doesn't count.
Right, thanks. The fact he was trying to kill me sort of wasn't lost on me, I think. Okay.
It's actually it was bolted down. It's just that the thing that held the seat up, the back of the seat up, had broken.
I know, Ian.
So Ian, you're in the horizontal position.
No, I had a box in the back seat to hold it up.
It was
Got
really
a lot
lovely.
of safety going on there.
It worked very well. Very effective.
Yeah, right. Thanks. Okay, but also consider this: how many drivers out on the road, and these poor bastards out on the Eastern Freeway, the police, where a driver under the influence of drugs and/or alcohol plowed into them.
Yeah.
So, how many of the company drivers are tested regularly for skills, drugs, and alcohol?
Well,
Clearly, his company didn't look after it too well.
yeah.
So,
the Eastern Freeway that happened.
Yep.
Yeah.
Your
Not that
checklist
makes any
should
difference.
help users identify the risks. And it's like doing a standard risk analysis. You can sit down with the people and get them to help you identify the risks. But some of them are obvious and should be obvious to everyone. So here's some questions you could consider. Is there proper ventilation in the workplace? Why is that important, people?
Stops people dying of suffocation and poisoning.
Well, no, something more recent.
Oh, COVID, of course.
COVID,
Yeah.
of course. Ventilation is one of the things that actually works against COVID. The things to have, and I was lucky enough to be a first aid person at CSC. But are there places where you can get first aid? Eye wash stations, and I'm going to deal more with PPE a bit later. All the machinery maintained regularly. It's often, and how many times have you heard, and I have beyond belief, the number of times when traveling on the M80 ring road, a truck has broken down. Why do these trucks always break down on the M80? I absolutely don't know. But it's mainly because they're not properly maintained. And we talked about signage and tags before. Okay. One of the things that's quite important is fire safety. The number of places where you can find a naked flame, even in your house. How many have got gas appliances? And you only need a bit of wind that blows the curtain, the house is on fire.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you know?
And Peter, we know what you're like when it comes to burritos.
Burritos?
Burritos and wind.
And wind.
The
Yeah,
bean
thanks
burritos,
for
isn't it?
sharing that.
Talking about the bean
Mark.
burritos.
I'm a bit lost with your anecdote, but never mind. Now,
Peter, can I just mention, like you're saying naked flames, that comes down to poor design. Now, I'm sure all of you, like my parents and everyone else in the world, has their sink and kitchen by the window. You
Of
open that,
course.
yeah, you open that window and, you know, the gas flame blows about and whatever. I actually have, which is not a good idea either, my stove is against an internal wall. And it doesn't matter how many windows I've got open, the naked flame never gets affected against the stove.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting.
you
that
have-
electric stoves can cause fires, but it's much less common.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you have,
Yeah.
Vita, do you
Sorry?
have a fire blanket by your stove?
No, but I tell you what, in every room in my house, I have a smoke alarm.
Yeah.
Well, that's helpful to
Yeah,
inform
definitely.
you that you're on fire,
Yeah, no.
but it won't do much about putting it out.
I have both a blanket and a fire extinguisher.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I've got 2 fire extinguishers in case one fails.
That's very nice too. Now, let me ask this stupid question. If there are fire extinguishers in the workplace, should you use them?
If it's safe.
Yeah.
No,
If it's appropriate, because not all fires
No.
can be put out, no?
no. You've got to be trained in the use of them.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah. Of
Oh,
course
of
you need to be
course,
trained, you idiots.
yeah.
Hey, hang on, it's like the driving example. You shouldn't be behind the wheel of a car unless you have a driver's license.
Yeah, that's right.
Excuse me, the 14-year-old they caught on the news tonight didn't have a driver's license. He damaged 10 other cars, including 2 police cars, and he finally ran into a tree. He didn't have a driver's license.
His parents are up for a huge bill then.
It's possible. Okay. And one of my favorites that when I go into, especially a factory, is the entry and egress signage. What must that signage normally be capable of?
Being seen in the dark.
Good boy, Ian Searle.
I know all this stuff. I've been health and safety officer in quite a few places.
I know that.
I
Okay.
was going to say I had a sign here somewhere, one of those glow in the dark ones that, that when you turn out all the lights, it glows in the dark, basically.
Yeah, well, on your airline, do you not sit there and the hostess puts her arms up and says, follow the lights?
Yeah.
And that's really handy at 20,000 feet. But never mind. Okay. Unloading and loading. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but remember the statistic. So many accidents happen with either slipping or stressing your body in terms of what you're doing. So think about loading and unloading. The issue about it is how many kilos should the average person lift?
As much as they can. No, I know it's a stupid
Wrong.
answer.
I think
As little as they can.
Well, not necessarily Colin Wong. That is a lazy approach. But it does depend on the individual to some extent. But as a norm, 20 to 30 kilos is up to the max.
What's the airlines say? 30 something, isn't it 30?
Yes, roundabout.
Mm.
And again, all that means is if they are heavier, then you should be looking for either somebody to assist you or use equipment to assist you.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Peter, sorry, just a quick question. Is that limit different for men versus women? Not that I want to make this a sexist.
I think if I remember that, there may be a difference. But I can't remember what the difference was. It might have been 15 to 20 for ladies, but I know some ladies that could lift me as well as the 20 or 30.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure
Yes.
that the sexist thing applies.
True.
There you go. Now, the thing about it, and for those who don't, and I have told you many times, know that I have a robotics degree.
I've heard that, yeah.
The issue is I actually know about loading arms and how dangerous they can be.
Mhm.
The stories are rampant about the first robots, and I've still seen robot installations where they haven't got the safety of it right.
Mm.
But there was a wonderful example in Tokyo,
Yeah.
and something fell down off a robot
Yeah.
inside an enclosure,
Mm.
and the little Japanese man opened the safety gate, which turned off the machine. And being a good Japanese person and wanting to keep the neighborhood tidy, he went in and closed the gate behind him.
Mm. Right.
He's no longer with us.
No, that was pretty gory.
It surely
There have
was.
been accidents at Broadmeadows in the Ford factory. Not sure about the Toyota factory though. I haven't heard anything about.
No, I haven't heard the Toyota. I've been out looking at the robotics at Ford. Most wonderful thing to do when they actually had the welding line with the robots was how they did it. But then you had to watch robots when they're doing spot welding.
Yeah, really fascinating.
You line up 2 or 3 on either side and they go for it. And it really is fascinating to watch the sparks fly.
You've
It really
been at
is
the
something.
Toyota when it was
I haven't been to Toyota.
it's there's a view, or there was a view. Look straight down the line, probably 100 meters almost.
Right.
Robots all going. It was amazing.
Yep. And it really
These
is.
days, I would have thought just on the robots, because just visiting the first mine I think I visited that had autonomous equipment was the Finch mine in South Africa.
Mm.
They had an autonomous truck loop. It was a block cave operation where you cave the ore body and you draw the material from these draw points, drop it into a truck that then takes it to another draw point. And so that, and they call that the truck loop. That truck loop was fully autonomous. But they had a Wi-Fi positioning system and a tag system so that if a human walked into the area of the robots, the system would detect there's a human here and the robots would stop.
Yep.
And and that was a while ago. And now, I've read lots of stuff. They've been implementing a lot of proximity awareness solutions in mining, specifically, to allow particularly robotic equipment to detect people and stop, not.
Yep.
Not
Absolutely.
here. And I assume those factories that all have that now. If you wouldn't allow a person to get close to it.
Oh no.
Well, I'm not sure that that's quite true, Colin. It depends very much on the company and the policy they put around it. I mean, there are no reason why a backyard company couldn't have a robot. None at all.
Sure.
Anyway, the important thing is to understand the safety features and make sure that those safety features are well understood by the people in there. The one that on the news tonight, did anyone hear about the bloke who lost his scaffolding load on the M80?
No.
Yes.
There you go.
Kept driving. Yep. I did hear about that.
Right.
Yeah,
Are all connections tight and secure?
Obviously not.
Apparently not.
Yeah.
Well, they may have been, but it didn't actually last that way.
It seemed like not.
Yeah.
And they could have killed 2 or 3 or more.
Oh yes, indeed.
And the one that we should know about being good ex-BHP people was that all pieces of equipment are tagged so that the electrical conditions are checked and their wiring is all in good order. Okay. I'm not going any more into the, no, I will mention this. I went into the bank today. And that's not unusual because I go once a week, and they're doing some renovations in there. They're
Hang on, what's
rebuilding.
unusual is that you walked into a bank, Peter. What, in this day and age?
I had my mask on at the time.
No.
Unfortunately-
I was actually saying it from the point of view that they closed so many branches that you can't find one, just like a video store of the past.
And you know something? I actually complained to Combank management, and I got this crap answer and a phone call with this corporate claptrap, and I was disgusted. Anyway, so I walk into the bank, and there's my dear teller, and they know me quite well, even through
You'd be
my
the only
mask.
person walking into the bank, wouldn't you, Peter?
Sorry, mate?
You'd be the only person walking into the bank.
You were wrong.
No, there are a few other oldies out there.
You go there on pension day and you find out.
I don't have a pension day,
Yeah, well, that's so sad for you. I really do feel sorry.
and I don't need to go to the bank to get it either.
I know.
I was going to say, it's actually an interesting point you make there, because all the let's say older folk go there with their little passbook accounts that they need to get updated at the bank, and the banks are trying to get rid of them.
Yes,
Yeah, the people as well, I believe. Anyway, that wasn't my story. There's the poor girl working in this what you could only be considered a work zone, because they're building the bank around them. It's truly amazing, and the bloody lights overhead for her to work aren't on. And I go, do you not find that a bit of a problem? And she said, I had noticed. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh dear, why do you have lights if it's not to provide security and safety for your workers? Anyway,
Yes.
it was an interesting thing. Okay, I'll move on from there. Tools and machinery. Well, this is one of my favorite things. I think my wife believes that I go out deliberately on the farm to see whether I can bleed over everything.
I told you farming was a very unsafe occupation.
I have found it so, and yes, I wear all my PPE.
Mhm,
Absolutely do when I'm handling my chainsaw.
mhm.
I'm naughty when I drive my tractor. I don't put the seatbelt on. Well, you keep getting on and off. Bloody gates, you've got to open them, don't open themselves. So, and it just became a pain in the ass. So if I have a rollover in the tractor and get killed, it's my own fault. And more than that, have the people that are using the equipment, have they been trained properly in the use of it? Now, I have received some lessons in handling a chainsaw, and I am as careful as hell. But boy, it hits something, a piece of hard wood, and the blade comes, it's called kickback,
Yep.
comes flying backwards.
Yeah.
And if you're not wearing your hard hat, it goes right through your skull, which is really quite nice. It lets a bit of air in, and brain feels much better for a bit of fresh air, I'm sure. But the whole thing about a friend of mine wanted to give me his chainsaw because he had no further use for it. And he brought it in, and I said, I couldn't possibly take that because chainsaws come with a kickback switch on there. So if the thing actually does buck when there's a problem, your hand goes up, it trips the switch, and it stops the chainsaw dead. So his machine was so old, it didn't have that feature. There was no way I'd use it. So if you're being asked to use equipment, A, you need to be trained in how to use it. B, you need to make sure of the safety features on it. And C, you need to be trained fully in how to use the machine and all the safety features in it. And you shouldn't turn them off. Well, I can't remember the factory I went to, and the bloke's using a press and he's putting his hand in and out, pulling out the stuff.
Ouch.
And I reckon you get your rhythm wrong and you'll end up with flat fingers pretty quick.
Yeah.
And he turned off the bloody safety
that was pretty,
thing that came down and stopped him doing it.
yeah, that was
And
pretty
I went,
common.
oh no.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
so,
very common.
yep, absolutely. Stairs and ladders. Gentlemen, at what age should you stop climbing ladders?
As soon as you stop knowing what the center of gravity means.
Or I don't think half the people that fall off them ever heard of it, Michael.
And
Be
that's why
honest.
they fall off ladders.
Yes.
I think the answer is osteopenia.
Sorry, Andrew, say again.
Osteopenia. When you get osteopenia, which precedes, which is the head of osteosis, sorry, that's when you should stop climbing ladders.
Yes, well, I think if you're over 60, you shouldn't be climbing ladders.
Oh, dear.
25% of workplace injuries happen from falling.
Yeah.
And many of those are to do with stairs, ladders, and such devices.
Yeah.
Me, I climb up my haystack and throw bales off it. And it's nearly stable. I mean, it only rocks a little bit when I'm up there.
But
Yeah,
you're under
Peter.
60.
Yeah, Peter, just don't find out the hard way.
Well, fortunately, I hadn't built the stack too high. But that would be another case of me falling down going, oh, look, blood. Oh, dear, it's mine. Oh dear. And I know how many feet out from the wall. For every metre high, it's 1 metre out for every 4 metres high, isn't it, Ian?
I believe that is so.
There you go.
Yeah,
See, I remember my training.
I tend to limit myself to step ladders these days.
Well, again, they need to be very secure.
Absolutely.
And not,
You need to make
and you
sure
don't
they
put
are
a book under one leg to make it even.
Yes, well, actually, inside is even safer.
Well, hopefully your floors are straight.
Yeah.
Okay.
My floors are straight.
Yep.
Are level.
And- Good. Enough on ladders. Okay.
You
But
didn't
this
answer the
is
last
part of what-
question, Peter,
Yo.
on the slide before.
Oh dear. All right.
You say just for BHP people only. That's a bit, I don't know, racist, sexist.
No, it's not.
Industrious.
Tribalist.
Industrious.
Tribalist. Thank you, Colin. I'm happy with that. Well, I didn't know till I went to BHP. So I figured only BHP people knew that.
Well, I know it is 1 to 4.
Well, and it's exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I
And you
didn't learn that at BHP,
did work at BHP. So there you go.
but I didn't learn it at BHP.
I don't care whether you did or you didn't. It's irrelevant. Okay. I think you need to think about safety as more than the physical. We've dealt a bit with the physical there, but there's the mental as well as other abuses that happen in workplace and indeed create unsafe conditions for people to work there. I mean, you've only got to think about the number of people that may have committed suicide at work because of, and it might not be the work pressure, or it might be a combination of it. But here is a wonderful little wheel talking about power and control.
Yes.
Where people try and put over other people, whether it be their employees or other employees that they work with, and a whole range and raft of things that are just as important as the physical safety aspects that you need to deal with in terms of your safety audit. Now, many of
Add to
these...
it, Peter?
Sorry, Anna,
Can I add to it?
please do.
Bullying should be there. It's a
Well, if you wait a slide or two, I'll get to it.
okay.
Okay. And yeah, sex abuse is an enormous problem. Absolutely is. And we'll try and deal with that a little bit. But there are many other areas. The problem is with some of these things is getting people to talk up, because there's often fear there and they're afraid to talk about it.
Mhm.
So seeing it or getting other people to report such things that they see is just as important as having a process to handle such abuse in a workplace or home or wherever. Okay. The whole thing is you've got to encourage people to speak up. The problem had been, or may still be to a large extent, is that when people speak up, nobody takes any notice.
Or there's punitive action.
And there needs to be a carrot and a stick part to it as well. It should just not be tolerated, is quite simple. Okay. And here's some that you may think about. Is there a policy for reducing mental stigma in the workplace? Are staff attitudes to mental well-being monitored? I mean, bullying, I've seen it in so many workplaces, and you won't believe it, that probably the worst that I'd heard of was the army.
We will
And-
believe it, of course.
Oh, yeah, well, it goes with the territory to some extent. But in a workshop, two apprentices were bullying another, and they stuck an air hose up his bum and blew him up.
Ouch. Yeah, they do
I
silly
mean,
things. Yeah,
it's outrageous.
it is.
It is truly outrageous. Okay. Psychological hazards and mental ill health at an individual level discussed with managers, supervisors, and employees. And I think this is part of the deal. You've got to be able to have this free exchange of ideas. And you've got to be able to point to the fact that you actually go out and do it. It's not just something you write on a card and put on a wall and everybody ignores.
Ignores it.
It needs to be seen to be done. And positive role models. How many times have I seen it where the managers just turn their back on something that's going on? Really bad, absolute anathema to a role model. A process in place to ensure psychological hazards and incidents are reported within and discrimination dealt with. I'll try and deal a little bit with discrimination, I think, in the next slide. Yeah, there you go. I even know my slides. Okay, I've talked about bullying to a little bit. Okay, but this is something that you should all know by now. Women don't feel safe in workplaces. It really is true. And there's reasons for this. Boys only clubs, bullying, whatever else. People being coerced to do things that they wouldn't do, and told that if they don't do it, they'll be fired. It truly is shocking. And training for everybody in the place, not just supervisors, everybody in the place is important, so that there is positive messages to go against discrimination, and it just won't be tolerated. Okay. And who was Ian? You talked about penalties. There should be the penalties for this are just the same as breaking any other safety rules. I do think, if I remember rightly, BHP had some sacking offences, and being unsafe at work was one of those sacking offences.
True.
And discrimination is no less a safety offence.
It's a
Hey.
very complex subject, Peter, right?
Oh,
It's-
look, I couldn't possibly deal with it in one slide. It is enormously big. And I
but
think,
it's also isn't black and white, right? Like it's,
oh
it's
no, never is.
yeah, it's a black and white to say, yeah, sorry.
And some of it's cultural, and some of it's possibly religious, but for whatever reason, it doesn't make it acceptable. Really doesn't. Okay, let me move on. Okay.
Just on that, Peter, at least, you know, the arc of change is in the positive direction, in the sense that, you know,
I would
it
hope
would've been
so.
that many years ago, when you're talking about workplace safety, you wouldn't consider that under the class of us. But now, if you talk about safety in the workplace, it's often the first thing that people are now thinking of. Is there
Yes.
bullying? Is there sexual harassment?
Mm.
It's become a top of mind issue in the past. It was completely
Yeah.
ignored as a
Yep.
safety issue.
Yep, and it is exactly a safety issue.
And Peter, there's one thing that nobody has ever covered with safety, and this happened to me. I happened to work with two murderers, and I didn't know they were not murderers at the time, but I worked with them in the sense that I was doing computer operations at night, and these guys used to work in the office during the day. Now, one of them was an accountant, and the other one, I don't know what he did. I thought he was the CEO's chauffeur or whatever. Both of them are still in prison to this day. One of them battered his wife to death in the bath. The other one put his entire family, his wife and two children, on fire. Now,
Right.
that is something that nobody has ever covered. You know, in computer operations, if you're the only one on site and,
Yep.
you know, there's odd characters around. And I used to call my boyfriend and I go, I don't like these two guys. Do you want to come in and keep me company? And, you know, at the time, I didn't know. I don't know why I got that gut feeling. I thought, well, one's a family-minded man. He should go home. The other one, he was young and good looking. And one day I said to him, why aren't you home with your family? He goes, oh, my wife is an air hostess, and he's the one that battered his wife to death in the bathtub. And, you know, sometimes I had to go around to them because I needed the system at a certain time to get night, you know, the operations going to finish on time.
Yep.
And, you know, that's a safety issue that should be really, really thought about. And no one ever thought about that.
Well, not true. My first installation that I worked in, we had female operators, and the rules were actually quite stringent. They mightn't have been, they were the best for the day. They certainly aren't now, but no one female should be left alone with another male on their own.
Yeah, well, in my case, I was the only one female left on the shift. And the guy
that's not right.
No, it wasn't, but it happened. And I was being paid good money at the time. But the guy that put his wife and two children on fire, I ran aground with him on my second or third day. I was given parking in the building in the basement, and he went off at me. So I went back to management. I said, I don't know who this guy is, but this is what he did to me. And they said, all right, don't park down there. Don't bring your car in anymore. We're going to give you a taxi voucher to come in and go home. So they must have known he was odd, but, you know, they had a duty of care to me to let me know.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and it didn't happen. As for the other guy, I don't know how much they knew or didn't know about him. But, you know, if you worked during the day, you would know. You'd suss a character if he just not mentally sound or not.
Indeed. All right, people, let me move on a little bit. Okay. This one is appropriate today. The question is, and I put this all to you, should you all be wearing masks at work still?
Some customer sites are actually mandating masks while we're going through the winter COVID blast or Omicron B5, whatever it's called these days.
People are
Not all,
going
but some
down.
are.
People are going down in droves faster than they did under the other variants that we've had.
Yeah, more people have died this year than the last
Correct.
2 years put together.
Yep.
And Australia currently has the highest number of COVID cases per capita than anywhere else in the world.
Oh,
And
really?
wait, I'll give you an incident. My brother, my niece, my niece's girlfriend, my nephew, his girlfriend's dead, and someone else, they all went to this soccer match on Saturday. 4 of them, 4 out of 6 came out with COVID.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And
Actually, just
that
as an
question-
aside, another safety issue, but I went to a book club meeting last night, and this morning I got an SMS saying, you know, can't remember, it was like a Medicare alert on, you know, you've been in contact with someone who's tested positive, and then, you know, click here to get your rapid antigen test. And of course, I'm immediately thinking, this looks a bit sus. So I just did a search on the internet, you know, cut and pasted the word with the word scam. Anytime I see something suspicious, I almost always, if you just Google scam and then whatever the phrase is, you'll get a heap. And it's a big one going around at the moment. It's a,
oh dear.
that because of, you know, the COVID boom we're having at the moment, the phishing scams have caught on to. This is a way of getting people to click on bloody texts.
Oh, thank you for that, Colin. I haven't heard this one.
Yeah, if you
And
get
nor
it,
did I, Cole. Can I tell you?
But it was. I mean, the thing that you got to watch out for, and I actually fell for this recently on a Facebook Messenger thing. Some of you, if you're connected with me in Facebook, and I'm not that extensive a Facebook user, but I had some cousins on a group meeting they had, and I didn't attend the group meeting. And then immediately after, one of the cousins sends out, oh, you should have a look at this. And I thought, oh, this must have been a photo they were sharing at the group meeting. And I clicked on it. And nothing happened. Nothing, you know, went to a website, nothing. I'm thinking, oh, I'm not sure about this. And I left it. And then some days later, I got a Facebook alert to say someone's logged into your account from Adelaide, basically, with an Adelaide number. Is this real? And I said, no. And then sure enough, my Facebook then sent out that same batch of alerts. So there must have been, like, I'm guessing it was a phishing scam to actually just catch your login. But someone had to manually get into your login to, you know, it wasn't an automatic one, if you like. But and I had to go into bloody Facebook and go and cancel every message to every person I'd sent it to. But there's so many happening now, and I'd get one at least once a week now on my phone, on my mobile phone. And I've just got used to, if it's coming from a mobile phone number, you know, instead of, you know, a named sort of location, straight away I'm just suspicious. I just don't answer even any calls coming from an unknown number.
Yep. And I'm onto that exactly myself.
Yeah, and my view on it is, if it's somebody who really wants to get a hold of me, they're going to leave me a voice message.
Correct.
Exactly.
In which case,
Correct.
hey, I'll call them back. You know, and I think that's what we need to do. Unfortunately, telecommunication system isn't as protected as what we'd like it to be.
Yeah. And now sometimes I have a friend who often sends me a link, and I'm just told him, I'm not going to open any of your links anymore. I'm just not going to fall for this again. And you just avoid links in messages and even in emails. Be very careful on clicking on links. But yeah, sorry to distract it, but it's a bit like the COVID. It is partly this is happening because we are going through a real COVID wave. And the point I was going to say on that, I was really surprised how quickly people have dropped the masks. Going to a cafe now, nobody's got the masks on. The cafe people, people attending it. It's like, oh, we don't need that anymore. Don't need this anymore.
They're nuts.
That's not true. My 6 members of my family, the whole 6, they were all wearing masks. My brother said at, I don't know, halftime or whatever, him and his son, my nephew, they moved to another area and the other 4 stayed together. So I don't know what happened with the other 4, but they still had their masks on.
Yeah.
Well, the masks aren't necessarily going to protect you perfectly. I mean, they just reduced the incidence of spreading
Yeah.
by a certain percentage that's still debated. But it's such an easy, back to your original point, Peter, it's such an easy thing for us to do, for us to have dropped it so quickly, and none of the health officers are sort of going on about this at the moment. I mean, I don't understand it. It's like it's like, are we in a different world or something?
Yeah, I think that's it. Well, it caught up with me. I haven't got COVID, so don't worry about it. I went to the Orchid Club meeting the beginning of July. The day after, I received 2 messages from the president. Firstly, he had COVID.
Oh, no.
And secondly, the guy that I was talking with, he had COVID as well.
Oh, no.
And
Were
I
you in
thought
close
to myself,
proximity?
yes, close enough. More than 1.5 meters. And yes, I did my rat tests, and no, I've had no symptoms, and it's been a month. So I assume I've ducked another bullet.
You
but
are lucky
You're right,
Very lucky.
Colin. Very lucky.
because I had my cousins visit me. Both of them the next day basically tested positive for COVID, and I caught it.
Yeah.
Yeah, mate. I
So
was talking to a neighbour in the street today, and she said she was in her car, and I was standing 2 meters away at least. She said, "How are you and Hilda?" And I told her about Hilda's knee replacement. She's doing fine, people. She really is.
good to hear.
She's nearly ready to run a marathon, but she couldn't do it before, so we're not sure she's going to be able to. But the thing was, we started talking about COVID, and she had it. Her kids got it, and she tells me that they all got it from school. So anywhere a large number of peoples gather, and there's not proper protection, there's not air purifying, there's not masks being worn, whatever else that you can do, then the danger is out there. So wearing your PPE is really important, and not just doing it here and there, but being consistent in where you do it. Certainly inside seems to be the right place to wear it. It's not quite so bad, they tell me, outside, but I don't believe that that's totally true. But
One last thing, Colin, Mr. Farrelly, there was, even you might not have heard, but the chief meant to the government that they should be wearing masks inside everywhere.
Yep.
But they've refused to take that advice on.
Also, they've been getting
That's Victoria. They've been given that by the
You're breaking up, Cole.
medical officer.
We're only getting every
But they
second word from you, Colin.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
what Colin is trying to
any
say
case.
is that the health department have said we should, go back to mask wearing and be careful of what's happening, but the government is refusing. Or I think that's what Colin is trying to alert to.
Correct.
No, they didn't mandate it, which is not.
Yep, they're not mandating it.
And in
Yep.
fact, the health people are a bit doubtful about mandating because they're not sure that it will be effective.
Yep.
But you know what? We're all smarter than them. I remember when COVID was first around December, January, come March, I was wearing a mask way before, even February, I think it was, way before anybody was wearing a mask. And to this date, I've never taken my mask off. I still go shopping. I'm one of the few in the shopping centres with a mask.
Yep,
And
I'm with you, Peter.
I always
But
wear
wait,
a mask
yeah,
shopping.
but wait, I'm not even vaccinated, so I will continue to wear a mask probably forever now.
Yep.
Yep,
Well,
yep.
here was the worst example you've ever heard in your life.
Yeah.
The opening of Parliament occurred yesterday.
Yes. It
The
was-
Labor Party, the Greens and the crossbenchers all wore masks.
Yeah.
The Liberal Party decided en masse that
Not-
masks weren't a good idea.
Oh.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Dog
Um,
whistling.
Hey, does that mean if they all come down with COVID and there's some important vote where they need to be in Parliament, Labor will get it through?
No,
no,
they have fairs.
They don't have.
They do.
They. I mean, that might have worked in the last Parliament. Might have been an issue, but they can't win the vote anyhow, right? On either house, so they probably think it doesn't matter. They're literally dog whistling to their extreme constituency.
They
Correct.
certainly are. Yeah.
That's why I can tell you what, they lost Box Hill. Was it not Box Hill? The seat at
Chisholm.
Chisholm, I reckon, and most commentators that anyhow, the commentators that understand that area says it was simply Chinese people being so annoyed that Gladys Liu, followed the policy of Scott Morrison down the line and didn't speak out against the anti-China comments, right? And so a lot of Chinese people have been getting a lot of racist sort of activity has increased for them. A lot of them experienced that. They see their local member didn't help, and it's like, so they were going on an anti-China rant. It's like dog whistling to their extremist members, and they paid for it. They've lost government.
And Colin, I live in Chisholm, that area, and the sentiment was vote against anyone but Gladys because she had let a lot of people down, even if she was Labor or Liberal. I don't think she would have won one way or another. So it was a Titanic.
And you will all be pleased to know that our local member, Mr. Wilson, is no longer with us either.
That's right. Yes.
And I made sure I voted against him rather than for anyone else. And I said to myself, I know that I don't normally vote this way, but I can't stand these people anymore. So I'm not sure whether my vote counted that much. But maybe it helped. There you go. All right, back to this. It's not just these things, right? You use, you get in your car. What's the first thing you do? You get in your car?
Put your seatbelt on.
Put your bloody seatbelt on. And if you're lucky, the car yells at you till you do.
Yes, it's indeed. Yes.
So that's when you put the seatbelt on.
Right,
When
of
the car
course.
tells you to.
Exactly.
As you're driving out the driveway.
I don't do everything Volvo tells me, I'm telling you.
Hang on, but it doesn't tell you to put your seatbelt on when you're reversing. If you happen to be one of those people that needs to reverse out of your driveway, because it's legal not to have your seatbelt on while you're reversing.
Yes.
There you go.
Well, when you've got reversing cameras and mirrors, you really don't need to turn around. And I can't see out my back window anyway.
Yeah, but
I'm
Peter,
too
the
short.
point is illegally you don't need to have your seatbelt on while you're going backwards.
Well, thanks, mate. I really will take it off every time I do from now on. Not.
Yeah.
Okay. Enough on that. Okay. Now, God, I can't. What are you doing up there? Thank you for moving. A few things to think about. We talked a lot about lifting earlier, and this is just an example. So you just consider this. When you're picking something up and you know that it's heavy, so you assess the task and you go, gee, that might be heavy. So you plan your approach. Do you need equipment? Do you need somebody else to help you lift it? Now, given that you think you can lift it, position your feet, get a good secure grip, keep the load close to your body, maintain good posture throughout the procedure, use the leg muscles, bend the knees, and use your body momentum to help pick things up. But even then, people, you could end up with a nasty accident, a slip disc.
Yeah,
You could drop the material on your foot. I've done that before.
I've done that.
I had a farmer I was working with, he's a good friend of mine. He drove over me foot with his tractor.
Yeah,
I wasn't real happy about that.
I've been driven over by a wheelchair.
Yes, well, you and your missus need to be more careful. Okay.
Well,
Okay.
not much I can do about it when I'm not.
Okay.
Anyway, I'll tell you that I spent over $10,000, so I didn't strain my back.
Well, excellent.
Just on the posture things, Peter, I was watching a YouTube video on this a while ago and hadn't sort of appreciated that. I knew all the other points you had, but they were pointing out the point that if you do have to lean over to pick something up, because you can't necessarily do the squat
Correct.
trick on everything, but you need to keep your back straight when you are doing that. Don't bend your back over, create a curve in your back when you're lifting the thing. That's keep it straight.
Yeah.
That was the posture, even when you bend over at the pelvis, right, and not with your backbone.
Colin, you're 100% right. It all comes back to the center of gravity.
Yeah.
Thank you for
That's
you and your
what it
friend,
is.
Mr. Gravity. It must be a grave situation.
Yeah,
Okay.
well, Peter, don't get me started on the gravitational constant of the universe.
Oh, please don't. Okay. I talked already about PPE, and I don't want to do any more, so you can read that later. And don't forget your COVID protocols, people. Okay. How many of you have signs up that say where you have dangerous goods, and how many of you know what the signs mean?
I'm just looking at all these. I don't think I've got any of these.
I have explosives.
Do you?
Yeah, bullets. and
Peter, stop talking about your burrito.
not my burrito, no. I have. I that must be the flammable gases, is it, Michael?
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, don't you have caustic soda or Drano or something like that at home?
Not really, no.
Oh, so your drains, you let your drains get blocked.
No, I have a drain snake.
Oh,
I have a bunch of these, and they're mostly for herbicide and pesticide.
Yep. Everyone has a heap in their shed or somewhere. My wife has a wonderful cupboard full of cleaning stuff.
Yeah, well, what have I got? Not sure I've got any of that.
I bet you got some corrosive agents.
Bleach
Bleach is a corrosive agent.
Pardon?
Bleach is a corrosive agent.
Have I got any bleach?
You will have some sort of acid, even if you've
Like
got
what?
vinegar.
Yep.
Actually,
What
just
sort of
on
acid have I got?
kind
I
of
think I
mentioning
might have some bleach.
when you mentioned the snake in the context of the explosives. Just a quick story from my high school days when I would have been, I don't know, 12 or 13. I went with a bunch of mates down to the back of our school. There was this sort of bushy area at the back of our school, and they wanted to have a smoke out the back. These young lads, they were the real lads in the school. And I went looking for snakes. Before I went out searching, we were just talking, gossiping about how some mad kid we knew, there was a rumor running that he'd bought gelignite to school.
Yep.
And they were all talking about it. So I go around looking for snakes. I pick up a piece of tin, and there was, unbeknownst to me, gelignite. I go back to the other kids and said, "Hey, what does gelignite look like?" And someone said, "Oh, it looks a bit like soap." I said, "Hey, I think I've got it." So we went over there and got it. Holy shit. And so the kid, one of the kids who was the toughest kid in the school, always getting into trouble, he insisted, "Well, I'm going to go and tell the principal." So he went and told the principal about this, and they called in the police for it. But I remember at the time thinking, when the principal asked him, "Why were you down the back of the school?" He said, "Oh, we were looking for snakes."
And nice and safe that was too.
What a blast.
And hang on.
Yeah, actually, there's a safe. That is a safety trip. Actually, if you want to pick up a piece of tin in the bush, you should use a stick to flip it out. No, don't use your hand.
And the
You know,
tigers.
You need to put that safety tip in.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
indeed.
Colin, it's nice to see your story lasted a couple of decades after it happened.
And can I say Beaumaris High was absolutely not the safest place. We used to have kids come and let off. Somehow or other, they broke into a railway hut and got detonators.
Ouch.
Oh yes, well we used to. No, it wasn't me. This time it wasn't me. I plead not guilty, Your Honour, even though I used to make explosives in the backyard. I used to love blowing up the incinerator. It was just the most magic thing to do.
Actually, the kid that I was talking about did follow the safety procedures. He had the detonators in his locker.
Oh, good.
And he kept he had the gelignite at the back of the school, because that is one of the rules, right? You never carry the detonators with
Correct.
with the dynamite / gelignite, whatever.
Well, if you have, as I do, which firearms, and I must carry them in a separate lock case, and my guns must be in lock cases when I move them, and in gun safes when I arrive, and the bullets or cartridge shells for the shotgun are stored in a separate locked box within the safe as well.
Yep.
So all those kind of rules have been around and are enforced. I can tell you, when the police come round and check. No, they have, mate. They really have. And now there's new gun rules. I'm expecting them to come and inspect my new gun safe that I bought from Bunnings.
Yeah.
It has to be now
all those burrito explosions, of course they're coming around.
Exactly.
And I might be a bit notorious, but I'm really not that bad.
I certainly hope those burritos are locked in a separate lockup in the kitchen.
Yes, burritos again.
A locked cupboard,
Okay.
a locked drawer in the fridge. That's what you need.
It's a bit hard to keep
good.
the ammunition away from the firearm.
Yes.
The beans have to be kept separate from the burrito until you.
Can I say that my friend Ralph Altmans, dear Ralph, said to me, had I used my firearms, and could I even hit the broadside of a barn anymore? And I'm afraid my eyesight isn't as good as it used to be. That's why I use a shotgun.
Let's say you can kill everything in the.
Well, I try and get close. I did fire at a snake climbing up a bush to get on the porch up at the farm, and I was no more than 10 feet away, and I missed.
But that's most likely going to be a python, right? Climbing.
No, it wasn't. It was a little tiger. It was a little tiger snake.
They don't climb trees.
Oh, yes, they do. Don't tell me. I saw it. Okay. The thing is, all hazardous material, you need to train people in the use of it. And if you've got firearms, you need to train people in the use of it. When I was a paymaster at Victorian Railways, they gave us all guns, and they gave us guns, and they actually took us down to pistol training, and most of them couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, absolutely couldn't. And they told us, if you pull the gun out and point it at somebody, you're on your own. We won't back you at all. So I thought, oh, well, okay, I'll leave it in my pocket and they can have the money. It's fine.
Well, that's
I'm
probably
not
the
worried.
best way to go anyway.
More than likely. Okay. Remember that with certain chemicals, you should wear gloves. You should wear protective masks. I spray my blackberry. I wear a mask. I wear rubber gloves. I have my body, no bare skin anywhere. Is the way to go. And clearly you don't try and breathe the stuff. And there's plenty others there for you to read. Okay. Who's responsible for safety? It really is a joint thing, both employers and employees. And it is the employer's responsibility to provide a safe working environment that is free of risks to health as so far is reasonably practical. I think that's how the Act says it. And they're the acts for Victoria, if you want to have a look at them. Okay. Yeah, more stuff that you can read later. Okay. Now, this is something I fall down pathetically badly at. Keep the workplace clean. I'm a shocker. Use the proper tool for the job. I'm pretty good at that. I mostly wear my PPE, except when I'm bleeding. Never work on live equipment. Every piece of equipment is live until you're sure that the plug is out and or the switch is off.
Yeah.
Make sure chemicals are properly labelled and stored. The problem is with a lot of chemicals, they're corrosive, and if they're in a tin, they will leak out. So make sure that if you have them, that you dispose of them correctly. Your local council will help you with some of those things. And if you see something that's unsafe, for God's sake, tell anyone around you. As Hilda said, and it's a story that she tells occasionally, she and I went on a trip to Gippsland down to the lakes entrance. And we hired a boat and we went over to this island that I think is called Castaways. And it was for sale at the time. So we tied our boat that we'd hired up to the dock and we're going to have a picnic there. So we wander out and our dear boxer goes running up to this little thicket on the beach and he starts barking and out comes, you will not believe this, the most enormous snake you've ever seen in your life. The bloody thing must have been 6 inches wide and about 10 feet long. It gets bigger each time I tell it.
Of course.
And it's the dog's chasing it straight towards us. And I said to Hilda, run. I beat her to the boat by some distance. But yes, so make sure you tell other people when there are unsafe things around. Okay. And the issue is you shouldn't allow things to proceed if you know they're unsafe. That's really the whole important thing. And that was posted in Employers Productivity News or something, whatever it was. Okay.
But Peter, that's a good point that you make, because part of the duty of care is to let other people know as soon as you know as well.
You bet. And there's a whole heap of training that you can do. You can read it there. There's a million bits that you should do in terms of a business. If your business is not doing this, then you should mention it, that they need to be doing this kind of stuff. Okay. Yeah. Things to avoid, obvious. Don't ignore the signs. Don't say, I know all this shit and walk out of the training. Wear the right gear. Make sure you clean up things when there's spills. Here's one for today. Coming in sick or thinking that you need to come in sick because you're indispensable. Go and visit some of the other indispensable people in the cemetery. And discrimination is not number 11. It really needs to be higher up the list, but just speak up when there is discrimination and say, that is not acceptable here. Now, that may be difficult to do, especially in a redneck environment. But unless people speak up, we will never get any better at it.
Isn't that what the chief of defence said? The what you walk past is what you're going to accept.
Correct?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, clearly, the whole thing is to prevent things like death and disablement. But are we not aware that in Australia there is modern slavery? People working for far below the wage that they should be getting.
Yeah.
All these poor bloody imported workers that are told to work in unsafe conditions and work huge hours and get a pittance. That's no more than slavery. And discrimination is anything that and could be based on sex, ethnicity, colour, etc. And not doing anything is depraved indifference. It can't be anything else. And taking the view that, oh, look, it'll cost the business too much to do that is just not acceptable. So no profit first attitudes. Okay, now the fun part of the night. If I can make this work. Come on. Whoops. Here we go.
You haven't got it on the other screen, Pete.
What have I done wrong?
We can see your presentation still.
Oh, bother. Let me go back. Can you see it on there?
No.
No.
Just unshare first.
Unshare first.
Yeah.
Okay. Hang on. I've got to go down the bottom. Do I? No. Where do I go?
Up the top. There's a little red thing which says unshare.
Stop share.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Now what do I do?
Well, what are you trying?
I've got some URLs I want to play.
Oh, well, they were up. I thought you were trying to do something else.
No, you need to probably share your entire screen, Peter, and click on the URL. So when your browser comes up, do that.
Yeah, they'll come up as well. Yeah, yeah.
So if I hit share screen now.
Yeah, but make sure it's the whole screen, not the app.
And Colin, we're not ignoring you. We just can't hear you. We can see your lips moving, as in Colin Farrelly.
Sorry, I was saying you need to share the desktop.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you share the
where
desktop?
do I do that, people?
Go back to where you were before. You'll have to undo it because all you're sharing is the PowerPoint screen.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
So stop the share again.
Okay.
And then hit share, and then it should say either share desktop 1 or just share desktop.
No, stop share.
Yep.
Stop share.
That's right.
Now share it.
All right, share screen is all I've got down the bottom.
Now share screen.
And it should come up with options, and one of those options of screens to share will be desktop.
Where, mate?
Basically,
the
they're actually called
Desktop
screens. Yeah, they're actually called screens on Zoom.
Hang on, I think I might have clicked. Yeah, sorry, that was me, not Peter.
What am I doing wrong?
You're doing nothing wrong, Peter.
Oh, don't tell him that.
He just hasn't got it right yet.
Exactly.
Oh, come on, help me.
Click
Escape.
share screen down the bottom, Peter, and then it'll present you with
Right,
with
just wait.
an option that says, you know, do you wish to share a certain window or an entire screen? Select your screen where your browser is.
But it says you are screen sharing. Do I go new share?
Oh, actually, you might just need to end your PowerPoint presentation.
All right, I can do that.
That might not work either.
Yeah. Now, there you go. Just go to the tab that says Total Idiots at Work 2022. Because we can see your browser now.
You can, I can't.
I can't. I can only see Peter Jeffrey has started screen sharing.
Uh-huh. Oh, I wonder what that does. You're using advanced encryption. That's nice. Bother. All right, I know how to get around this. I will send you the slides and you can watch them.
Yeah,
What should be-
that'll do.
Yeah, that's
that'll
That'll
do.
be the easiest thing to do. Okay, now I'll finish the last few slides. Come back here, you little beast. They are very funny, people. They really are.
Right, we'll look at them later.
All right.
definitely.
No, I've missed where I do my share. Where's my share now? Okay, I refuse to play anymore. I will read you what I was going to do. Okay, the thing is, after doing my safety presentation, most of you think, not me. Well, you're bloody wrong. I stood on a drill at Coopers and Lybrand and put a hole in my suit. A farmer I know, he's a good friend of mine, forgot to look up when he was using the jib on the front of his tractor.
Ouch.
He actually wrecked his whole garage doing it.
He was lucky just to get off that easy.
Yes, well, it was hugely funny because he and I were building the shed at the time. But there you go. I set fire to some blackberry up at the farm. It went 150 feet up a gum tree. The local fire brigade were not amused.
I'm sure they would.
No.
Okay. So here, people, I want you, this is the summary, and this is basically the last slide anyway that you need to take notice of. Okay.
Hey, Peter, you do realize you've gone dark, so we can't see you and we can't see your slides.
No, I don't know what I've done.
Peter, press escape.
You've hit the
Press
you
escape.
need to hit the video button as well, Peter.
What have I done?
We're trying hitting every button.
You've disappeared into the ether. Oh, we can see you.
Yeah.
Yay!
Back.
Okay.
Now
Okay,
share
here we
screen
go.
and go and share
Right.
again.
You shut up, Colin. It's just too
Well, you know
hard.
how to do that. You've been doing that all.
I've
you
lost,
know-
the,
Yeah,
I've lost
but
the
hang on.
presentation.
Yeah, but hang on, Colin. You weren't there for the hour preceding when we started, when Ian was actually taking Peter through the instructions of sharing his.
I've lost it.
It's all gone out of his head now.
That's it. It's gone.
It's lost.
Hey, it's close enough to 9 o'clock, Peter.
Yeah, well, all right.
I think you
You
And
can
don't
read the
even
last
have
ones.
COVID brain.
There's a wonderful list at the end, which is the summary of the things that you've been doing. And if there's any of you that would like to, there's a slide that says spot the hazard.
We'll have a look at
and
that. We'll send you the answer.
well, yes, I think there's more than one.
Mhm.
And there's a slide.
Oh, don't
which
give
I-
it away.
There's a slide I was going to share on unpaid versus paid work and the responsibilities that are involved in that. So do read them when I send them to you.
Yeah,
What is it? 8:55. My God, I'm so good at doing this.
you are.
Starting and ending on time. My God, I should get a medal. Perhaps. I don't know.
I've got some chocolates there, Peter. I'll get the silver foil and make one for you.
Thank you, mate. That would be truly lovely. Yes.
I actually have to ask permission because that's chocolates. I don't eat
Well,
chocolate.
no, I really shouldn't be. I got on the scales this morning. I've been increasing my weight.
Have
No
you?
more chocolates for me.
Unfortunately. Yeah.
You're not the only one, Peter, unfortunately.
I mean, I know since COVID, I just have not been exercising the same amount. We don't go to the places we used to go to. Oh dear. And
Well, hang on. Your exercise has increased because you're always going to the fridge, getting up and going to the fridge. That's
well,
that's the problem.
Sometimes the fridge comes to me on a plate.
That's very kind of the fridge.
It is. It's really generous of it. Yeah, I thought that and all. Okay. Well, thank you, people, for your attendance. Do remember, safety is important, and safety is up to you.
Yeah.
So
Thank
thanks, people.